while Russia fired a barrage of missiles into Ukraine overnight, including the western parts of the country. Ukraine says at least 16 of the 36 missiles fired were shot down and some critical infrastructure was hit. In eastern Ukraine, officials say at least 3 people were killed Wednesday when Russian strikes hit apartment buildings as well as a school. Ukrainian troops have released video they say shows a strike against a Russian multiple rocket launcher armed with thermobaric weapons. CNN's Devin McKenzie is in Ukraine's capital and joins us now from Kyiv. Good to have you with us, David. So you're learning more about these so-called re-education camps where Ukrainian kids were sent to Russian camps, essentially being indoctrinated. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, we've certainly been reporting on this as CNN for several weeks now. This allegation, and then backed up by a Yale University and State Department backed report, which has very, very disturbing allegations backed up by significant proof as well. The allegation is that there are thousands of or hundreds of Ukrainian children who were taken or given to camps in occupied Crimea and Russia proper. And those children remained there in many cases, separated from their parents. Now, those camps, according to the report, have indoctrination, in some cases military training. And the most serious allegation is that some children, in fact, have been put up for adoption to Russian parents, the ultimate Russification, I guess, of those children. We spent time with a mother who is desperately trying to get her child back. Weeks ago, we first met Tatiana Volkova in Kyiv, in a shelter for displaced families. All of the mothers here separated from their children by the trauma of war.
Emotions overwhelmed me when Lilia left. When I realized what was happening, it terrified me. All I wanted was the best for my child at the time.
Her 11-year-old daughter, Lilia, stuck in a Russian camp in occupied Crimea. All the lessons are in Russian. At first glance, the retreat seemed like any other summer camp. But the loyalty expected from Ukrainian children is crystal clear. Part of what a new Yale University study calls systematic re-education efforts. But Tatiana and Lilia's story begins a year ago. Their hometown of Kherson fell quickly to advancing Russian troops. Within days, the occupiers began a campaign to Russify the population, often coercing thousands of parents like Tatiana to send their kids to the camps. But when Ukrainian forces took back Kherson in November, Tatiana's daughter was on the wrong side of the front line.
We provide rescue mission for children who were abducted now in Russia Federation and in Crimea.
Mykola Kuleba, the founder of Save Ukraine, declined to say exactly how they negotiate their entry into enemy territory, just that the mothers can't do it on their own.
It's impossible to communicate with any Russians because you can ask these mothers, they don't want to give children back.
But Tatiana was ready to take the risk.
I'm worried, of course. You cannot even imagine my emotions inside. It's fear and terror. It's emotional that I could see her soon, and this is a big deal for me.
11 mothers and 1 father, putting on a brave face, but theirs is a perilous route. From Ukraine by road to Poland, into Russian ally Belarus, through the Russian Federation to occupied Crimea.
We were counting every kilometer on approach. I could feel it with every cell in my body. I was very emotional when we were closer and closer.
Save Ukraine spent many months planning this moment. Reuniting families shattered by war, returning children who just wanted to go home to Ukraine.
Once I entered to meet, it was an outburst of emotions. Once we embraced, it was like a great weight lifted.
In the end, they gave up the children willingly. But Save Ukraine says that hundreds, perhaps thousands, remain. Our 2 countries are at war, says Tatiana, but there are good people everywhere.
Such emotional reunions there, David. I have to wonder why these mothers sent their children to these camps in the first place. No doubt many were conflicted by that decision.
It's a very good question, and certainly the mothers we spoke to were conflicted, but in some cases it was something that they wanted to do just purely to get their children away from the front lines and to the safety of occupied Crimea or Russia itself. And in the case of that particular mother, when the front line changed, she was separated for a child. She said that some mothers are too nervous, in fact, to get their children back because of the criticism they might face here in Ukraine. And I want you to look at these images from Moscow today, released by the Kremlin. This is Vladimir Putin meeting with the presidential commissioner on children's rights, as they call it. Now, he, in that video, is praising her for getting children out of Donetsk and Luhansk to safety and, in fact, to be adopted by Russian parents. The Russians have a very different outlook on this story. They say the allegations are absurd and they're just trying to keep people safe. But that particular individual in that video, the US and the EU says is in fact in a way a ringleader in terms of getting children away from their parents or out of Ukraine and Russifying them. This is not as dramatic, of course, as the missiles and strikes we are reporting on every day, but it is another horror of this war. These children separated from their parents, and many of them are still separated with no real prospect of getting them back. Lynda?
Yeah, hard to imagine the heartache some of these parents, these kids are going through. Devin McKenzie, great report there. Thanks very much.